welcome Mark Ritchie. He's the branch chief at the Business Economic Development and Tourism, as well as Diana Singh. She's the Business Innovation Coordinator at the County of Kauai for the Office of Economic Development. And we like to say thank you so much for presenting this topic to our realtors, Introduction to Opportunity Zones on Kauai. And this should be like about a 30-minute presentation. And Diana is going to be here to support the County of Kauai and bring it back to here on Kauai. So thank you and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. You can take it away, Mark.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay? Can you see my slide?
Maybe you can introduce yourself a little more if you want.
Yeah, my name is, thank you very much, Shyla, and aloha everyone attending this webinar on Opportunity Zones. My name's Mark Ritchie, and I'm a branch chief at DBED, or the Department of Business and Economic Development. And so why am I giving this presentation? When this tax incentive was passed a number of years ago, it actually came to DBED to work with the counties to actually choose the opportunity zones. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but I was the one whose desk this landed on and worked with the counties to actually choose these zones. So that's why I'm giving this presentation. Just a couple of sort of maybe ground rules. I'm not here to give any tax advice or any legal advice. I'm here just to explain how this program works. And Diana, I know, is fielding questions as well on opportunity zones, particularly for the County of Kauai. So with that, just what is this program? And I'm calling it a program, but in reality, it's a tax incentive. Everything is basically done through the tax system. It's all private sector run. But what this program aims to do is it's an economic development tool that uses federal tax incentives to direct investment capital to underserved low-income areas, that is targeted communities called opportunity zones. These are census tracts that have been designated opportunity zones. And investing in these zones, you can receive federal and state tax incentives. This program or tax incentive was established as part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. I don't know if people remember that, but it was right in December, though, right towards the end of the year, that a big tax package was passed, and this was placed into that tax package. This program or idea had been around for quite a while. Originally, it was bipartisan, although when it was finally put in, then it became a little bit more partisan. And the reason I say that is because the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was passed in Congress under reconciliation, which means that they didn't have to get the 60 vote, that they need in the Senate, and won't go into a lot of details there. But why am I mentioning this is that originally this program had a lot of reporting that was supposed to go along with it, and a lot of reporting to the Treasury Department. Because it was passed into reconciliation, a lot of that was stripped out. So we don't have, as an economic development agency, a lot of data. It's more of word of mouth where these investments are going and things. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So this is, and I'm giving a high level view on this. And when I get to the end of the presentation, I'll direct you to the DBED website, where we have detailed PowerPoints that, 50 slide PowerPoints that'll go into all the nuances of the tax system and everything, because there's hundreds of pages of administrative rules and things that sort of go along with this. And that's why I'm sort of saying I'm not giving any tax advice or legal advice. If you're interested in taking advantage of this program or you're interested in it, you really need to talk to your accountant or a tax lawyer to ask questions and sort of work through it and see if this is right for you. So how does this actually work? What are these tax incentives? So investors, that means like high net worth individuals, but it can also be corporations that have triggered a capital gain by selling an asset such as stocks or real estate, can receive special tax benefit if they roll that capital gain into an opportunity fund within 180 days. And there are three, actually, I left one of these off because it's no longer relevant, but I'll come to that in just a minute. So the investment vehicle is not you as an individual, it's an opportunity fund. And so that would be like a corporation or an LLC. So let's say you sell something, stocks or a piece of property, and the capital gain is $1 million. You can then establish an LLC. Let's say it's Mark's Opportunity Fund. I want to invest in opportunity zones. So I create an LLC, Mark's Opportunity Fund. Then I can take that $1 million from a capital gain, or a part of it. I could take half of it, or you don't have to take the whole thing. And within 180 days, you put that into the fund. So now that fund has $1 million or $500,000, however much money you want to put in that. And then it's that fund that actually does the investment in an opportunity zone. And we'll sort of get into what those investments can be in a bit. So why would you want to do this? What are the benefits of doing something like this? Well, first of all, you still have to pay capital gains on, let's say, that 1 million, but you don't have to pay that until 2026. And also, and the reason I left this off, I said 3 there and I deleted it just actually a couple minutes before we started this. There's another part of this, which is 7 years before you hit 2026. If you have like 7 years, if you did your investment 7 years before 2026, you could get a reduction in basis of 15%. So in other words, if you had $1 million capital gain, the tax that you're going to pay December 31st, 2026 would only be capital gains tax on $850,000. So you got a reduction of 15%. 5 years before 2026, in other words, this year, if you were to do an investment, you could still take advantage of that and you get a 10% reduction, so that it's $1 million capital gain, you're only going to pay capital gain taxes on $900,000 of it. So those are 2 things. I left them out because very quickly we're nearing the end of the year, and unless your investments are in place, you're not going to be able to take advantage of either one of those. But the real kicker, the real reason you want to do this is that the program is trying to incentivize long-term investors to put money into an opportunity zone and then to keep it there for 10 years or longer. And then in doing that, when you go to sell that asset, and it doesn't have to be in 10 years, you could sell it in 15 years, you could sell it all the way to, I think it's like 2048 or something. So you don't have to sell it after 10 years, you keep it for 20 years. But when you go to sell it, because it was an opportunity fund, it was the investment vehicle, you will not be subject to any capital gains at the federal level on any appreciation. So after 10 years, let's say that asset doubles in value. Let's say you put $1 million in and then it's worth 2 million or 3 million. Let's say you have a $1 million capital gain again, or $2 million capital gain, you know, no tax on that whatsoever, capital gain tax. The first year of the program, state tax capital gains tax did not conform to federal tax law, but that was actually changed. And so now the state capital gains tax conforms to federal tax law regarding opportunity zones, meaning that you will have no state or federal taxes on any of the appreciation that happens after 10 years with this asset. And that's the real kicker for long-term investors. So why was this program sort of put together? What is it hoping to do? It's not just trying to reward investors in general, but it's trying to look at how we can sort of help underserved areas or economically challenged areas of the country and of the state. So how does this work? So funds can be managed by traditional financial institutions, where it's almost like a mutual fund. They can form a fund and then take capital gains from a number of investors. Or it could and then they could do either one investment, or they could do multiple investments, kind of like a mutual fund. Or it can just be one investor making one investment, and creating that LLC. Like I said, sort of Mark's Opportunity Fund, that I want to make one investment with the capital gain that I realized, and within 180 days, I got it in the fund. And basically, after the fund is formed, you basically have like a year, 2 years, and they've done some extensions with the pandemic to then deploy that into an investment. You can't just sort of put your money in a fund and then wait for 5 years. You got to start looking at what you're investing in and be on your way, like within a year or two. So with that fund, at least 90% of that opportunity fund must be invested in an opportunity zone. So you can take 10% for like administrative costs and some other things, but 90% of that fund has to go into an investment in an opportunity zone. So now, what are these investments? The investments, they must be equity investments. Specifically, eligible purposes include sort of stock or a partnership interest or business property. And I think that's, since this is a real estate association, that's probably what you're interested in most, is business property. The creation of these opportunity funds is all private sector driven. You do not need to call DBED or anybody at the federal level to create one of these. You just need to work with the lawyer, create your LLC, put the money in. All the administrative stuff is done through the tax system. So you're going to be filling out tax forms, and this is going to go on tax forms when you file your taxes. Real estate-based investments are probably highly desirable, particularly here in Hawaii, is just because of the strong potential for appreciation. And as I said, you can also do equity investments, meaning that, let's say you have a company in an opportunity zone, and they're looking for an equity investor to come in, and they're going to, launch a new product, and they want to sell half their company or bring in a minority investor. You can do that. I don't think we see a whole lot of that in Hawaii, but you can actually do that. You can invest in companies. But they're taking an equity investment. It's not a loan or something like that. And then you also have to realize, at some point that investor might want to get out, after 10 years and sell, and how do they do that? Lastly, real estate investments need to be substantially improved within 30 months of the acquisition. And I think we use the term like no passive land banking. In other words, you can't purchase, like for $1 million, a rundown apartment building and then sit on it for 10 years and then try to sell it and then get the appreciation. You have to substantially improve it. And what the guidance on that is, it's literally like a 1-to-1. So if you put $1 million in to purchase the rundown apartment building, you're kind of expect to put another $1 million in renovating and improving. If you're building on just, vacant land, then you've already met that by definition. So again, why is here? I work for an economic development agency. Why are we interested in this program? Well, we want to try to improve distressed areas. We really look at new housing developments, or looking at workforce housing, low-income housing, how we can try to improve that. It could be expansion funding for businesses. I know we don't really have a whole lot of that in Hawaii, but I think on the US mainland, there is some of that in certain parts of the country. And then kind of just new developments in underdeveloped areas, such as shopping centers or a manufacturing plant, business offices. And there's a low barrier to the fund creation that might offer opportunities for communities to invest in their own kind of strategic priorities. So before we get to Kauai's 2 opportunity zones, how is this done in the first place? And I won't bore you with the details, but basically it's by census tract. And at the beginning of 2018, it came through the governor's office, hey, you got to choose your opportunity zones. So they use the same formula as new market tax credits for the census tracts. And so that data was available. It went back a couple of years, like I think the 2015 was the most recent, or 2016 is the most recent. Actually, it was 2015 was the most recent data. And what they said was, of all your census tracts that are eligible for new market tax credits, you can choose 25% of those. So Hawaii actually had 99 census tracts that were eligible for new market tax credits. And then we could only choose 25 of those census tracts, given how the program was put together by law. And so that's where we started working with the counties on which opportunity zones would be best, which were eligible in that county, and then which ones they wanted to choose. And the Treasury Department did give some guidance and help, although they did not give us very much time to do this. Somebody asked me, did you do public hearings and things? And it's like, well, we had like literally a month before we had to choose. So we had to very quickly start doing a lot of work with the counties and things. The guidance they gave us, though, is obviously by definition, all the opportunity zones are eligible for new market tax credits. But they also told us that you should bundle this or overlap it with your other economic development programs, because this could be sort of a kicker to try to emphasize or help with the current economic development programs you have. And those would be like enterprise zones. Basically, every opportunity zone we have in the state, with one exception, is in an enterprise zone. And Diana is our enterprise zone coordinator for the Island of Kauai State County Partnership. State land use designations. The opportunity zones does not supersede anything else or trump anything else. I mean, you still have to do all the same planning, all the same zoning. There's nothing that you sort of get a free ride on. So it has to make sense. And what's happened in the rest of the state, and I think if you look at all the rules and stuff, the word rural was sort of thrown around a lot with this program. But if you look at how this program is set up, this is really kind of an urban program designed to funnel money at more urban environments where there's already investment opportunities. This is not something like for sustainable agriculture out in the countryside. This program is not designed for that, if you look it over. We also overlapped it with sort of the state or the transit-oriented development, particularly on Oahu, where all the rail stations are going. We've sort of put opportunity zones to try to encourage housing, businesses, commercial activity around the rail stations, so people don't get in their car and they can go from where they live to their office, and it's all by rail. And so we've really tried to push economic development with the opportunity zones around the rail stations. And then also tried to overlap it with the county economic and community development plans. And then we also tried to twin this with low-income housing tax credits, new market tax credits, historical tax credits, enterprise zones, and we are trying to get community input in terms of where they want development, try to work with the banks on the CRA sort of things, and then working also with the county government. So now, why did Kauai get these? Let me talk about the rest of the state first. So because the rest of the state is completely logical. And remember, these were census tracts that were eligible. So Hawaii Island, it's basically, we have two, it's urban Kona and urban Hilo. There's 4 in the Hilo area. And that's exactly what Hawaii Island want. They want to push this type of development, housing and everything kind of into the urban areas. They don't want to be trying to incentivize, taking up farmland with new developments and stuff. They want to push development into the urban core. That's part of their economic development plan. So that was great. They got what they wanted. It all worked out very nicely. Maui, basically we got downtown Kahului and actually we got Kahului and then, downtown Wailuku as 2 of the opportunity zones. And that's exactly what they wanted because it's all around the harbor, the airport, the same thing with Hilo. And there's a lot of potential for development using the opportunity zone, kind of program in terms of incentivizing investors to do things there. Also, half of Molokai, where Kaunakakai is, that was done incentivized as well and chosen as a opportunity zone. There's 2 census tracts on Molokai, and the one that we chose for this program is where, kind of the only sort of urban quote unquote center is on Molokai. And then, as I mentioned, Oahu is all along kind of the rail stations. So really trying to push housing and commercial development around those. So these were the 2 things in yellow that you see are the only census tracts on Kauai that were eligible, given the formula that was used for new market tax credits. I think this is a classic example of sometimes just using census tract data can give you funny results, because this is not what the county wanted at all. The county wanted Lihue and then Hanapepe. That's what they wanted, because they wanted to push development, housing, commercial activity into those 2 centers and kind of revitalization and things like that. And unfortunately, no matter what we did, those were not eligible given the way the census tracts are drawn and then the data we had to use, whether it was eligible or not. So those were not eligible. These other 2 census tracts are really interesting, and why they're eligible, it was the census tract data. Now, up north in Hanalei, it's mostly conservation land. That census tract is mostly conservation land. So it's really just the town of Hanalei that, in the area around there that was eligible. And again, that's not where the county wanted to put an opportunity zone, but that was the only one that was eligible. And then we have the Kaloa down in the southern part of Kauai, just over from Poipu, and you can see that census tract. I know some people have said, there's $1 million homes in that census tract and a lot of luxury housing, but obviously the census tract data was picking up maybe more the farmers data and more inland or something, but that was the one that was eligible. So Kauai did have the opportunity, if they wanted just to let Oahu take, we could have used, 2 more opportunity zones on Oahu if Kauai didn't want them. But the county at that point, and again, this is back in 2018, said, no, okay, we'll take these, even though these are not the ones that we want. And here you can sort of see a map of this. And note, Kauai, if I go back here, note Kauai, the enterprise zones. That, since Diana is your coordinator, you can see that pretty much the whole urban part or anywhere where there's development is in an enterprise zone in Kauai. And the enterprise zone, it's supposed to be also economically challenged areas, but I think the formula that we're using is a little bit easier and more things are eligible than was with the new market tax credits. But that's also a great program, which also I'm happy to talk about at another time if people are interested.
Mark, I just wanted to let everyone know too, I added in the chat the ArcGIS map for those zones. So if anyone wants to zoom in to see specifics, it's in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diana. Also, so here are the maps. So what I'd really want to encourage people to do, because again, we're not here to sort of give you tax advice and things. Let me touch on one thing that, because this is a realtor association, I know people think, oh, 1031 exchange or a reverse exchange versus opportunity zones. What's the difference? Well, you can Google those and you're going to get all sorts of interesting sort of thing. But just at a high level, with 1031s, you know, basically you're deferring paying capital gains by exchanging like for like, you know, and kind of building, I mean, you could exchange as many times as you want and keep deferring that capital gain. Opportunity zones, you have a capital gain and you're going to pay tax on the capital gain in 2026. But if you wait for 10 years holding that investment, then you'll have no capital gains. It's not deferring capital gains. You will have no capital gains on any appreciation of that business property. But you got to hold it for more than 10 years. You can hold it for 15 or longer, but at a minimum for 10 years from when you actually purchase it. And that's the real kicker, is they really want patient investors, people willing to hold on for things for a long time. And so if, in terms of your incentives, you have to be willing, like in 10, you know, to put that aside for 10 years before you think you're actually going to make it any money on it or be able to sort of reap the benefits. And if you have to sell before the 10 years for some reason, you know, you will owe capital gains, you know, regular capital gains on it then. On our website, if you go to invest.hawaii.gov/OZ, we have GIS maps. We have GIS maps that you can go to and zoom in and see very like an address. Is it in an opportunity zone or not? Also, if you go to two sort of seminars that we did, I think in 2018 and 2019, we have all the PowerPoints there. There is a PowerPoint from the CPA firm or accounting firm, Novogradac. They actually flew over here from the mainland and did kind of extensive presentations. And it's about a 40-slide PowerPoint, and it'll go to all the minutia about opportunity zones and investing and how it works, and it goes into a lot of detail. So I really recommend people go to that website and look around in this tax incentive. And with that, I think I'm coming up on the hour. I was going to turn it over to Diana to talk a little bit about from the county perspective.
Yeah, aloha everyone. I'm Diana Singh. I'm the Business Innovation Coordinator with the Office of Economic Development. And I so appreciate Mark going through and doing this presentation. He's been very involved in this process. I've now been with the county 2 years, but that has been after these zones were identified. And in the time that we've been there, we've worked with a few businesses and interested investors in these zones, but thus far the interest coming directly to the county has been minimal, I would say. The more relevant part, and I think just to summarize some of what Mark is saying, is when you think about these zones, there is a benefit for real estate in those areas, but it is not a federal program, it is not a state or county program. This is a federal program. And big picture, the benefit and the way that the county gets involved is that investments from investors in these opportunity zone funds really have the opportunity to improve affordable housing and other new job creation and other benefits that help our community as a whole. The ideal situation is that the investor receives these deferment of capital gains, but also that our community has a benefit. So if there's ways that we can help work with businesses in these zones or investments in new projects in these zones, we're happy to talk with you more about that. Typically, we don't get involved, though, in guiding an investor into a specific project or in residential real estate. But if you have business questions, we're available. If you have questions for the county overall, I'd be happy to talk with you and get you to the right person. But mostly, I just wanted to do a quick hello, give you my contact information for anyone who could use that.
Yeah. Can I add something, Diana? Because I think you touched on that. That's like, what is DBED's role, right? We don't take applications. We're not here to sort of guide that.
Right.
But what we are interested in doing is, if our other programs, that maybe loan programs or enterprise zones, could help make a community-based project sort of successful, that's where we would try to get involved. But we have to sort of seek, community-based sort of projects, like, again, we're an economic development agency. We're not into sort of like luxury housing or just real estate, investment kind of per se. But there are projects and basically I keep saying this, they're in sort of the other counties where there are things coming together where there could be opportunity zone investors or funds, but also there's other sort of low income housing tax credits that are being used, or other sort of actual government programs that sort of, or can be part of that whole capital stack to make a project successful. And that's kind of what DBED's role is, or it limits itself to.
Yeah, and to Mark's point, as an example, our opportunity zones are all part of enterprise zones as well, which he touched on. So businesses in those zones that are creating new jobs and growing the number of employees over time have additional benefits. And those are things that the county would work with them from a business side to help make sure they're aware of, help enroll in, and ultimately lead to some tax savings for those businesses. I'm curious from all of you, are you receiving a lot of questions from investors and from potential clients about these opportunity zones? Okay, I see a few responses in the chat. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so one other thing Mark mentioned is that part of these projects, ideally they align with our economic development goals for the county. One way we document that is through the comprehensive economic development strategy. We're working on a new one right now, which will kind of discuss some of the initiatives of the county and the direction for certain industries. And that's a really great way too to look at some of the alignment between possible projects and opportunity zones and county priorities for economic development. And when that's completed, I'd be happy to pass that along to Shyla as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? I know if anybody doesn't have any questions, then I guess we're going to end it here. But I just wanted to say mahalo to both Mark and Diana for your time. And yeah, thank you so much.
Shyla, I have a question.
Anybody? Oh yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Mark, so just to be clear, I missed part of it. You said it has to be a business property. So if they develop a property, it must be run as a business, AKA vacation rental, right? It cannot be a second home. It cannot be, it has to be, act as like a investment.
Right.
Okay.
It would be the same situation, like I know 1031 exchanges. I mean, those are, it's rental property.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? All right. So I guess that's a wrap. Thank you so much. Appreciate your
It's my
time.
pleasure. Goodbye, everybody.
Aloha ahui ho.